Dear viewers, welcome to the Roundup, covering indie games and ARPGs for the PC. As always, timestamps are available and sources are in the description. Thanks for joining, let's dive in. Starting with the reveals and announcements. Path of Exile announced the next league, Expedition, which starts on the 23rd. I made a video about it, but here is a summary of what to expect. The league mechanic, Expedition, features expeditions, making you unearth treasures and monsters, and allows for various forms of trading with league-specific NPCs. There are logbooks as well that bring you to special zones which are comparable to blighted maps, for example. There are 19 new support and skill gems, one for each ascendancy, so that should shake things up significantly. The devs are reducing the power level of pure damage support gems, making triggered skills cost mana, tweaking the most powerful movement skills, and making the enemies in Path of Exile's first act much more dangerous. The flask system gets reworked, further reducing player power by using flasks. A battle royale mode is implemented and running every weekend apart from launch weekend. It is quite fun, but I suck at it big time and I still need to figure out how to play, and of course new supporter packs. I might pick one of those up again like I have in previous leagues. It only seems fair when you play a game for 200 hours or so per league, and I have the disposable income to support the devs, so why not? The devs, on the other hand, they get a lot of hate from the community, and I've already seen plenty of toxic videos, but I couldn't disagree more with that sentiment. First of all, the patch notes aren't even available and nobody knows what is really going to happen. Second of all, nerfs are not bad, and a slower game, it's not bad. The devs have a clear vision of what they want to achieve and explain that rather eloquently, and other games only wish they had someone like Chris Wilson representing their game. Of course, there are plenty of issues, and Path of Exile has several bullshit mechanics, but at the end of the day, it is the only ARPG with difficulty and complexity in this much content and endgame. You do need to invest time to make the best out of it, and playing this game without guides and extensive game knowledge is not as fun, but that investment is rewarded by the game, because it heavily rewards game knowledge. The game does rely on RNG, sometimes too much, but you can influence that more than you might think. And yeah, you do need to open several web pages to craft an item properly. That's all true, and it's a bit of bullshit, sure. End of the day though, Path of Exile is unique and nothing comes even close. It's up to you if you like that, but hearing the word nerf and burning down Reddit or making angry YouTube videos hasn't changed the game so far, and it never will, which is a good thing. I'm excited for the next patch, it looks great. ELEX 2, a futuristic ARPG and pretty much the next iteration of Gothic 2, is something I'm excited for. Through an interview with WCCF Tech, we get some more info about the game. Some of the main innovations are true flying and aerial combat instead of only a jetpack with limited fuel. There is more stuff to do in a map that is similar in size compared to ELEX 1. The game features an overhauled combat system, which was sorely needed because combat was horrible in ELEX, although clunky combat is a hallmark element since Gothic 2 and it's kind of part of the charm. Expect an overhauled AI as well as updated animations. Save games will not be carried over to the sequel, which plays out 6 years after the original game. Companions make their return, including their quests. You can romance more characters this time, and finally the game has many different endings based on your actions and the factions that you join. ELEX 2 still has an unleveled game, which basically means that your enemies don't level with you, they don't scale with you like they do in Skyrim, for example. One of the most interesting mods for Skyrim, Requiem, unleveled the game as well and puts fixed level requirements on zones, meaning that if you walk into the wrong forest around level 5, you will encounter a level 46 troll and that one-shots you. I absolutely love that in games because it adds to the progression of your character, and coming back 40 levels later and then one-shotting that troll feels amazing. Some players view it as limiting the experience or their freedom, but I think it is a very sensible mechanic, and ELEX has this as well. The start of the game can be absolutely brutal and you may think the game is unbalanced, but you're simply walking into the wrong zones. The game, however, doesn't tell you or notify you, which of course doesn't help. ELEX 2 will have the same features, and I am glad that they stuck to this idea. Release maybe this year, but I think early 2022 is more likely. There is some Final Fantasy XVI news. The previous version, 15, saw its release on PC in 2018, and it was a fun and refreshing comeback from that horror that was Final Fantasy XIII and all its different spin-offs. Dear lord, I'm a pretty big fanboy of the series since Final Fantasy VII showed me the true power of video games, but even I couldn't make anything out of this story, characters, or game in Final Fantasy XIII, and believe me, I tried several times. Falsy, LC, seed, completely incoherent timelines and stories, what a mess. Final Fantasy XV was much more grounded, depending on the inter-character relationships with your comrades, and I had a lot of fun completing the main story and exploring the lands. Final Fantasy XVI is produced by Yoshi P, the man who single-handedly burned the first version of Final Fantasy Online to the ground and created a realm reborn, and ultimately made Final Fantasy XIV in what it is today. He mentions on the official webpage that by the end of 2021 we would have an update on this game, which led many to believe that during the Tokyo Game Show this October we would get more info. It turns out that that is most likely not happening, because Yoshi P wants to show us something good and complete. This game is a PS5 exclusive for now, but pretty much all other Final Fantasy games make it to PC eventually, so hence some updates already. Jupiter Hell dropped a cinematic trailer and a release date. The devs describe it like this. Jupiter Hell is a turn-based shooter from the depths of cosmic hell, built on a classic roguelike framework updated with modern 3D graphics. Rip and tear zombies, demons and heavy metal monstrosity with chain guns and chainsaws, like chess with shotguns. The game is already in early access. It sits at a 91% positive user rating out of 300 reviews, and I never played it. Don't let that stop you, however, because judging by the gameplay available, the game seems rather unique, with turn-based combat that is fluid and as fast as real-time combat. It's got me intrigued at least, and I might check it out. Release date of the 1.0 version is August 5th. Right now, you are looking at Frozen Flame, a game from indie dev Dreamside Interactive. The short description states, embark on an epic fantasy adventure, shape the world and decide its fate with your actions in Frozen Flame. Choose a path, amass power and gather allies to make a stand against cursed forces, dragons and a destructive influence, the Frozen Flame, in this open world survival RPG. The game to me looks a little bit like Valheim meets Horizon Zero Dawn with multiplayer. Expect local and online hosted games, dedicated and private servers, and persistent worlds, very much like Valheim. I particularly like the aesthetic of this game. It is made in Unreal Engine, which is always good and smooth, and early access should launch sometime this year, in 2021. There's a demo on Steam as well, which may still work. I didn't test it, but it was created for the Steam Fest. We are staying a little bit into the Nordic atmospheres. Song of Iron announced their release date as well. This 2.5D side-scroller featuring action-packed visual combat, a truly astonishing environment and maybe even a gripping story, releases August 31st. It seems this game is mostly just focused on action and story, which would have me playing this for sure, because I don't really like the puzzle elements in side-scrollers, especially these days. I think because my real-life job is basically solving complex puzzles as well in IT, I just want something more casual most of the time. This seems to tick all the boxes, and I can't get over just how good this game looks. Super excited for this one. You'll be forgiven if you've never heard of Emberheart. It is an ARPG developed by a single developer from Belgium, Stefan Gerings, also known as Rebel Camp Games. I was contacted by this dev like a year ago, and I played his game, Emberheart, and it reminded me an awful lot of Sanctum Breach, and not necessarily in a good way. You know the situation when you're visiting someone and you see an ugly drawing on the wall and you're like, what's this? And then your buddy says, this is from my 5-year-old kid. And you both understand that that is the only reason that crap is on the wall, next to the things that are actually worth looking at. I feel the same about a lot of single developer games. The dev adores the project, it's usually a passion project, and they put it on Steam in a very early stage, a too early stage. And then you play it and you're like, this isn't very good, and that's putting it nicely. And there are so many other games on Steam, right? Why would I bother playing this? Much more often than not, the game never reaches a state where it can compete with other janky indie games, because those at least have some level of polish and they are much more fleshed out because they have a small studio behind them, or more experienced developers, or both. I also feel that single devs typically tend to burn out much faster, struggle with finances, not allowing them to fully commit to the game, and because they are a single point of failure, the game by default is at huge risk of never being finished. It only takes a serious COVID infection, for example, to significantly delay a game. Emberheart is such a game. The next plans for this existing game are to split it in two, into a prologue and into a main game. The current game, minus a few features because of a rollback to an earlier version, will be called Emberheart Prologue moving forward. A new Steam page will be created for Emberheart, the new main game, which will be made by a few people actually. It has multiplayer, controller support, graphics overhaul for a part of the levels, user interface rework, male and female custom characters, visually equipable armor, reworked skill system to have skill trees with allocatable points, a crafting system rework and potentially dual classes. It still seems like a ton of stuff to me, especially that customizable armor that shows up on your characters, a feature that even a game like Last Epoch didn't implement for the first 1.5 years because it was too much work. Only once the game started to make some money, they took the leap and started working on this, and they're still not done. It's therefore not clear if Emberheart will ever see the light of day given all these features that still need to be built. On top of that, the developer mentions that first they have to find funding and a publisher and then start looking for artists and then make the content, etc, etc. He estimates it will be early 2022 when you will hear more about the reworked game. I'll keep an eye out and keep reporting interesting developments as they occur. Now for something completely different. If you have played games in the 90s and the zeros on a console, there is a decent chance you know of Super Monkey Ball. This game is about a monkey in a ball, and you need to get your monkey to the end of the usually absurdly designed tracks. It's Fall Guys basically, but with monkey balls and bananas, and it's almost 20 years old by now. This was an amazing party game, and when I was a student around 2005, I was a true master of Monkey Ball and could maneuver that monkey anywhere. While being mostly a party game, Super Monkey Ball is also simply very challenging, and they're bringing a whole collection of this to the PC. It's called Super Monkey Ball Banana Mania's Remastered. I have no idea why. It's a remaster of Super Monkey Ball 1, 2 and Deluxe, and these are the classic games, the good games, the OG games. And I just wanted to let you know, do not play Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz, which is currently on Steam. That game sucks because your monkey can jump. That's not cool. You should only be able to jump if you hit certain parts of the tracks with ridiculously high speeds and then bounce off the surface. Then the Patch Plaza with an overview of patch news. Black Skylands released already a few patches. It is this cute indie top-down ARPG, pixel art, base builder and 3 more genres that somehow really work. Here are the highlights. Ship components get buffed and enemies nerfed while dropping more ammo and health kits. Island invasions, where bandits try to take back the islands that you conquered previously. They happen less frequently. That's a good change, and I actually wish this whole mechanic would just be removed. It's annoying and it feels like losing progress without bringing any value in my opinion. They dropped another patch in the meantime while I was writing this as well, with plenty of changes like autosave and saving in the menu, so they're really making haste tackling some of the annoying issues in the game, which is great to see. It's still early access after all. I'm promoting the game a little bit here. I'm not sponsored. I'm never doing any sponsored stuff. I just think it's very fun and decent while still being in early access. Good indie games deserve all the attention they can get, and I hope sometimes that my channel can play a bit of a role in that as well. Remember some time ago I reported that Steam players were review bombing NieR Automata because of the PC version on Game Pass got a whole heap of improvements while the Steam version still had to be modded to run properly? Well, it seems it worked, because now also the Steam version has updates such as borderless window, correct aspect ratios, high bitrate for cutscenes, HDR, anti-aliasing, 4K textures, global illumination, ambient occlusion, bloom, and several bug fixes. In other words, it may now actually be a proper PC port, 4 years after release. Red Solstice 2 released patch 1.4, which reworked the network infrastructure, so hopefully those lobbies are a bit more stable. Dropships return to the nearest outposts, saving you a walk across half the map at wave 14. That's nice. Daily challenges got added, rewarding some more experience. The UI received several overhauls and several menus, following earlier statements that the devs wanted to provide more clarity, and there is much more going on. Check the link in the sources if you're interested. And then it's time to release some games, starting with what recently released. Dream Engine's Nomad Cities entered early access on the 14th of July. It is a survival city building game with flying cities. Build, automate and defend a flying city to survive in a wacky, nightmare-infested, post-apocalyptic world full of strange science and dreams. Factorio meets They Are Billions, pretty much. Current Steam user rating sits at 73%. Spacepunks, released on July 14th, only available for those with a founder pack exclusively on Epic Game Store. It's early access as well. I went out of my way to warn people about the game with 2 videos, as I don't think this has even remotely enough content to warrant the founder package prices. These start at around $30, which is a lot of money for what you're actually getting. I'm curious how early access is going to go on Epic without user reviews and an easy way to provide feedback. It seems inherently worse than Steam in that sense and less objective. You have to go to a forum or the Discord where the sentiment will be already in favor of the game, so it's not neutral grounds anymore. I hope the devs watch some YouTube content about the game and actually make it better, because at the moment only the combat is good and everything else is not. The Immortal Mayor launched July 15th, also in early access, but on Steam. It is an Asian city builder with an Asian city style, and that's, I think, quite nice. You don't see that very often in the West, at least. You are a god and you need the people to worship you, a little bit like Black and White back in the day, but without the monster. It's not reviewing all that well so far, however. Steam user score is at 67%, with the negative reviews pointing out bugs, boring gameplay, translation errors and generally confusing gameplay and game systems. The consensus seems that this was released a little bit too early, even for early access. Then, upcoming releases. The closed beta of New World opens July 20th until August 2nd, if you're into that. If you run a closed beta a month before release, it is simply a marketing trick to get people to spend money. Given the scope of the game, it's an MMO, you can't make any meaningful changes anymore within just 1 month of development time. Smaller bugs are fixable, but anything that fundamentally sucks, like for example PvP, will also fundamentally suck at launch. If the beta is buggy and laggy, it will be the same at release. If I get bored of other games, I might play this for a month at launch or a bit later, and it seems from all the info that we have so far that is probably how long you can enjoy yourself anyway with New World. Up until now, Amazon Games has a terrible track record with cancelled games like Lord of the Rings MMO and even revoked games after launch like Crucible that eventually got cancelled. New World is their 3rd chance at launching something successful, and I'm curious to see if the 3rd time is the charm here. It honestly doesn't look that hopeful. Cris Tales is a gorgeous indie love letter to classic JRPGs with a new perspective, according to the description. It's got a rather unique art style, at least, that's for sure. This story-driven, strategic turn-based game is all about time, where you are somehow experiencing the past, present and future simultaneously. It's a little quirky, as JRPGs tend to be, but I am sure by just looking at this trailer you can tell if this is the right game for you and if you want to get into Cris Tales. It's quite niche, but a lot of people are looking forward to this, and I can see why. It releases July 20th. Time for some personal updates. What have I been up to? Well, I played some PoE Battle Royale, but in almost all cases I don't really enjoy PvP, and this is no exception. I'm a PvE player, which works well with that other game that I'm still heavily into, Final Fantasy XIV. I've temporarily stopped the main story quest at around level 74 on my paladin. I think Shadowbringers, by the way, and the whole environment there is amazing, as well as this idea of the balance between light and dark and how that actually is represented in this expansion. I won't spoil anything, don't worry. But I wanted to do something else, and so I leveled a white mage by only doing dungeons and healing, which has been a lot of fun. You're supposed to deal damage as well as a healer, making it a very interesting role to play so far. I'm level 54 and counting, and an instant dungeon queue is kind of nice as well. I am also very excited to play PoE again next weekend. I will be going back into solo self-found because that was very enjoyable the first time I tried it, and it takes off all the pressure of rushing to endgame and making currency. There are clear goals to work towards with unlocking all the different mechanics. The only thing I need to figure out is a build. I am heavily leaning towards a summoner because of my right wrist. I don't want to do too much clicking in that regard, but the Storm Rain or the Storm Arrows, they look kind of amazing as well, and I like playing rangers and stuff stuff, so who knows. Summoners are pretty well rounded typically, and the new Reaper looks extremely cool, and I think the builds are fairly straightforward and don't require really that much uniques, so that's good. And finally, the plan is also to play a little bit of the alpha of Batora Lost Haven. I think that's gonna be interesting. You're actually allowed to make videos about it, so that's good stuff. I will most likely make a small video about that, and yeah, can't wait to try it out and see what it's like. And that's it, ladies and gents. If you have any questions or remarks, put them in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did and you want more like this, consider liking the video or even subscribing. And if you really like the video and you want to support the channel, you can grab a YouTube membership for $2, which gets you absolutely nothing. But it does show your very much appreciated love and support. You can also check out my Nexus store, link in the card in the description, where I am selling a few of my favorite games. And if you buy those, I get a small cut. Thanks for watching and for making it to the end. Love you all. See you soon. Bye bye.